Terraria classes are pretty straightforward to play. While they don't lack fantasy and identity, most weapons fire at the player cursor and simply require to hold it on top of your target, or next to it for an endgame ranger, or don't hold it at all if you're playing summoner. This is not a bad thing, but to some it may become stale once you've done a few playthroughs of the game. If you're looking to add more meaningful replayability to the game with new content, especially in hard mode, there are two main routes to go. One option is to add new bosses to challenge the player. This is what most mods do, and the preferred choice of a lot of veterans, with examples such as Calamity, Spirit, and Mod of Redemption. I prefer going the other way around and experiencing custom classes such as the ones added by the Terraria mod, in hope that the new gameplay they provide will help me enjoy the game anew. The focus switches from dodging complex attacks to understanding the tools you're given to finish the game. And I also personally think it makes for a better multiplayer experience, which is how I play the game most of the time. I've been making Terraria classes for a while now, and having learned a lot both in game design and coding, I can see how some of my ideas aged poorly. If you want to see how I fixed my first, not so fun Terraria class and turned it into a worthwhile experience, then stay until the end. The first mod I worked on was the extraterritorial mod, which got discontinued. It added a Shaman class, which was basically a second mage class. Weapons looked like mage weapons, used mana, and the only special thing they had going for them is how they buffed the player on use. This concept is now used by the Terraria mod Bard. The player rapidly switches between weapons trying to get as many buffs going as possible, while buffing their friends in multiplayer, which is very fun. I had little to no programming knowledge back then, and after a few years off, Yuyutsu, the original Spirit mod owner, convinced me to start my own project, which turned out to be the Orchid Mod. With it, I re-implemented that old Shaman class concept, and while it was tweaked a lot over the years, let's skip to the latest version for the sake of simplicity. When designing a Terraria class, I try to make it interesting for experienced players, looking for something new and challenging. A good way of introducing variety in this game is to have the player switch weapons often, and in Shaman's case, complexity comes with resource management. Let's describe the class in under a minute. Shaman has 5 weapon types, all tied to an element: fire, water, air, earth, and spirits. Shaman attacks with a catalyst floating around the player, giving it a unique use style that cannot be mistaken with the mage class. Attacking with a weapon fills a resource bar for its elements. When it's full, a shamanic bond becomes active, and the player deals half damage with that element. A lot of weapons will deal more damage or have bonus effects based on the amount of bonds released. Player accessories and armor often trigger special properties if a specific bond is active, such as the Molten Ring accessory, making the player drip lava droplets while an air bond is active. Weapons that are not affected by bonds have a mechanic called orbs, where landing enough hits will trigger various effects such as healing the player or releasing homing projectiles. The Shaman class adds 2 custom UIs on screen. One allows keeping track of all the class resources, and one under the player keeps track of all the active bonds and progression of the current weapon. That's it, and this system is very mid for a lot of reasons. Let's have a look at the good parts. The element system is good. It defines the Shaman as a class, and is a good part of what makes it thematically different from the rest. We will keep it. The bond systems allow ramping up in power during a fight, which is cool. To my knowledge, there are no other classes looking to gain and maintain a power level over time when fighting. Seeing the weapon's effect change and triggering artifacts and armor properties as the player gets more bonds feels really nice and rewarding. Now for the bad stuff. Having weapon damage lowered for filling a bond feels terrible. The player is forced to switch their weapon and is punished for not playing the class perfectly. Orbs weapons aren't very inspired. They reward landing hits, which any class can do, and don't feel like they should be tied to the Shaman class in particular. Plus, most of the time the bond bar will be full before they trigger the effects, which forces a few hits with reduced damage. Finally, the UI is very confusing, and frankly a headache to keep track of. Let's fix all of this. First, let's get rid of the complex UI and keep things simple. I also took the opportunity to rework it and make it look nice and clean. I removed the damage loss from filling a shamanic bond, but I still don't want players to keep attacking with a single weapon, since item swapping is at the heart of the class. To do that, I will make it so the player has to right-click to release the bond once the bar is full. The catalyst then starts following the player and attacking nearby enemies like a summoner minion would, which both feels good and justifies why the player cannot choose the weapon anymore. This is a lot better because unlike the old system, it never punishes the player and is entirely under their control. If they wish to, players can even retake control of the weapon by right-clicking again, cancelling the bond. Scrolling through weapons can be annoying in Terraria, so releasing a bond automatically switches to the next available weapons in the player hotbar. I also gave the Shaman some new prefixes that go with their unique gameplay. Those can be accessed like normal at the Goblin Tinkerer, so you're free to waste your money if you wish to. Players tend to use orb weapons first, since they are not improved by having active bonds. I removed the orb system, but kept them as Shelly's first weapon option by triggering their bonus effects when their bond is manually released. They now use a mechanic that's actually tied to the Shaman, and something that other classes cannot do. Accessories and armor effects are still triggered by active bonds, which allows building the player character based on their favorite weapons and elements and rewards them for using them. In order to keep things clear, fire effects are always tied to damaging effects, water to healing and regeneration, air to movement, earth to resilience and tankiness, and spirit to the rest. That sums up everything I changed about the Shaman class. If you've been watching for this long, know that I really appreciate it. Please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and let me know your thoughts about Rework. I'm looking to make more devlogs in the future, mainly about Terraria and Minecraft modding, so stay tuned if you like this kind of content. The Orchid Mod will be released for 1.4.4 as soon as I'm done reworking every Shaman weapon for the new system. You can find a link to it in the description.